I'm Ashley Turner, and let me take you straight to that dinner where everything exploded. My mom leaned across the table, eyes locked on me like daggers, and snarled, "Your success means nothing. Your sister is my gold, the most important person in this family." My hand tightened on the napkin, years of bottled-up frustration hitting like a wave. I'd built a tech empire from scratch in Hollywood's startup scene, right here in Los Angeles, while they poured everything into her endless flops. But that night, as they begged for help with their mounting debt, something in me broke for good. I slid the bill across the table, the one for $45,000 they'd racked up, bailing her out again, and said calmly, "Here, take my mother's gold and pay it." The room went dead silent. Dad dropped his fork, staring at the paper like it was poison. My sister shifted uncomfortably, her usual smirk gone. They expected me to cave like always, to hand over cash from my app success to save their sinking ship. But I wasn't playing that role anymore. This wasn't just about money. It was the final nail in a coffin of favoritism that had buried me for years. That silence stretched heavy as lead until I pushed back my chair and stood. They thought I'd fold, but what followed wasn't forgiveness, it was the end. Growing up in our valley suburb home felt like a constant battle I was rigged to lose. From early on, my sister was the center of their world, and I was the afterthought they barely noticed. Truok ki jan voi kau chuyen kwa toi toi muon biet, banjang he luk me giova o than po nao. Toiret vui vi biet, kau chuyen min lan. Ksatoajau comment ben duoin he. That dinner wasn't the start. It was the climax of a lifetime of being sidelined. But telling this now, it's my way of claiming the narrative they never let me have. From as early as I can remember, around 9 years old, my mom made it clear who the priority was. She'd lean in during family dinners at our valley suburb kitchen table and say things like, "Danielle's got that spark, she's my gold." It wasn't just words, it showed in every little action. I came home one day buzzing from winning the school coding contest, clutching a certificate for building a simple game app that impressed the teachers. I rushed in, expecting at least a pat on the back. My dad glanced up from his phone and muttered, "Good job, kid," before scrolling back to work emails. But my mom, she barely nodded already, turning to Danielle. "That's fine, Ashley. But look what Danielle drew today, a concept for a fun drawing app. Isn't she creative?" She printed it out right there and stuck it on the fridge with a magnet, calling the neighbors over to see Danielle's talent. My certificate ended up in a drawer forgotten by dinner. The favoritism hit harder with birthdays. Mine were always practical school books or a cheap backpack, maybe $20 in a card with a quick, "Happy birthday" scribbled inside. Danielle's full-blown parties in the backyard with balloons, a custom cake, and gifts like art kits or new gadgets she hinted at. One year at 11, I saved my allowance for months to buy myself a basic laptop for coding practice. I showed it off at dinner, proud I'd earned it. My mom shrugged and said, "That's responsible, Ashley. But Danielle needs a new tablet for her ideas. She's my gold after all." The next week, they surprised Danielle with the latest iPad complete with accessories. I sat there watching her unwrap it, feeling my own achievement shrink. My dad tried to soften it once, whispering, "You're doing great on your own." But he never pushed back when Mom steered everything to Danielle. It wasn't long before the differences turned into direct conflicts. At 12, I entered a science fair with a project and app prototype that tracked homework assignments, something I coded late nights after homework. I poured hours into it, debugging errors on our old family computer. The day before submission, I left it open to test one last feature. When I came back, the file was gone, deleted. I panicked, searching recycle bin, but nothing. Danielle walked in smirking, saying, "Oops, must have been a glitch." I knew better. She'd been jealous of my focus time on the computer. I rebuilt it from scratch overnight, barely sleeping, and still placed second. At the fair award ceremony, my parents showed up late, just in time for Danielle's art display in the next room. Mom gushed over Danielle's poster. This is gold pure talent, my ribbon, a quick, nice work, before they hustled us home. That night, I started a secret journal on my laptop documenting every slight, the deleted file, the ignored wins, the constant gold praise for Danielle. It wasn't for revenge. It was proof for myself that I wasn't imagining it. The pattern repeated in small ways that built up. Family outings to the beach or malls in LA always revolved around Danielle's whims. If she wanted ice cream, we stopped. If I suggested a coding workshop downtown, Mom waved it off with, "We don't have time, Danielle's got dance practice." My dad Robert would sometimes slip me a few extra bucks under the table saying, "Use this for your tech stuff." But he never confronted Mom. Linda. That's my mom ruled the house with her favoritism, and he enabled it by staying quiet. I learned early to rely on myself. By 13, I was sneaking to the local library after school to use their computers for free coding tutorials. I'd code simple scripts like a budget tracker for my allowance, feeling a rush when it worked. But at home, Danielle's half-finished drawings got framed in the living room, while my apps stayed hidden on my drive. One evening, after a rough day where teachers praised my math skills but Mom dismissed it as just numbers, I overheard Danielle on the phone with friends. She laughed. "Ashley's project got messed up, total fail. She's so obsessed with computers, it's weird." It stung, confirming she'd deleted my file on purpose. I confronted her quietly in our shared room, asking why. She shrugged. "You always hog the computer. Mom says I'm the creative one anyway." That moment flipped a switch. I stopped sharing my progress, locking my files with passwords. My journal entries grew dates, quotes, even screenshots of chats where Mom texted Danielle my gold emojis, but ignored my messages. The damage was real. It pushed me to code harder, turning hurt into fuel. I built my first real app that year, a note-taking tool, and entered it in an online contest without telling anyone. When I won a small prize, $50, I tucked it away, knowing sharing would just lead to comparison. The favoritism wasn't random. It shaped us differently. Danielle leaned into it, expecting handouts while I grinded in silence. Holidays amplified it. Thanksgiving dinners where relatives asked about school, and Mom pivoted straight to Danielle's artistic potential. I'd answer about my coding club, but eyes glazed over as Mom said, "Danielle's the star here, she's gold." My dad nodded along, avoiding my gaze. By 14, I was taking online courses on app development, staying up past midnight. One night, debugging a glitch, I realized this wasn't just survival, it was building something they couldn't touch. But the cost showed in small cracks, skipped family events, quiet resentment bubbling. When Danielle bragged about her concepts getting likes on social media, stuff she copied from tutorials, Mom threw her a pizza party. My contest win, silence. It all peaked one weekend when I caught Danielle mocking my journal. I'd left my laptop unlocked for a minute and she snooped, reading entries aloud to herself with a giggle. "Ashley's so dramatic, thinks she's ignored." I walked in, snatched it back, and locked her out. That was the breaking point. I vowed to keep everything separate. No more sharing devices, no more explaining my work. My dad noticed the tension, pulling me aside to say, "Don't be too hard on your sister, she's just kid stuff." But it was too late. The sabotage, the constant overshadowing, it hardened me. I dove deeper into coding, creating a personal tracker app for my goals, logging every slight as data points. Looking back, those early years weren't just neglect, they were the forge that made me unbreakable. But discovering Danielle's laughter over my pain that day, it made me decide to hide my strengths completely, setting the stage for the independence that would change everything. By 15, hiding my efforts meant channeling them into something tangible. I started freelancing code gigs on platforms like Fiverr, fixing simple bugs for small businesses, or building basic websites during after-school hours at a local coffee shop in the valley. The Wi-Fi was free, and I'd sip cheap black coffee, earning $10 to $20 per job. It added up slowly. After 3 months, I had enough for a used Android phone, nothing fancy but mine. I set it up with coding apps right away, proud I'd done it without asking for help. Meanwhile, Danielle walked in one day flashing a brand new iPhone my mom had bought her for school projects. Mom beamed, saying, "Danielle needs the best tools, she's my gold." I gripped my coffee cup tighter, swallowing the urge to point out how my gigs paid for my own stuff. The gap widened with college prep. At 16, I stayed up nights researching scholarships, filling out forms for tech programs at local universities. I wrote essays about my self-taught coding journey, double-checking financial aid apps until my eyes burned. My dad, Robert, caught me once in the kitchen at midnight and whispered, "You're pushing hard. Ashley, keep it up." But when I asked for advice on one form, he hesitated, glancing toward the living room where Mom was helping Danielle with her art portfolio. "We'll see," he said, and that was it. They didn't hesitate for Danielle, though. She decided on a private art school with a hefty tuition, and they took out a loan without blinking, hiring a tutor to polish her application. Mom justified it over dinner. "Danielle's talent deserves investment, she's gold." I nodded politely, but inside it fueled my determination to handle everything solo. Danielle didn't stop at passive jealousy. She escalated to outright interference. At 17, I started hanging out with a guy from my coding club, a crush named Alex, who'd compliment me on my projects. We texted about app ideas and things felt normal for once. But Danielle noticed and turned it toxic. She spread rumors at school and online, telling mutual friends I was arrogant and obsessed with being better than everyone. She even messaged Alex anonymously, claiming I badmouthed him behind his back. I found out when he confronted me awkwardly in the hallway, showing screenshots that traced back to her IP stuff like, "Ashley's too full of herself for you." It crushed me. Alex backed off, and my few friends distanced themselves, whispering about the drama. I confronted Danielle in our room, demanding why. She smirked. "You're always acting superior with your code crap. Mom says I'm the one with real potential anyway." Mom dismissed it as sibling stuff when I brought it up, siding with Danielle as usual. That betrayal pushed me to protect myself smarter. I created a fake social media account under a random name, following Danielle and her friends to gather evidence without engaging. I'd screenshot posts where she bragged about the rumors, like a story saying, "Dealt with some haters today, feels good." It wasn't for confrontation. It was my way to track patterns, adding to my growing digital folder of slights. My dad saw the tension rising and pulled me aside one evening, praising my scholarship apps quietly. "You're independent, Ashley, that's something." But he wilted when Mom walked in, changing the subject to Danielle's latest inspiration. His weakness stung, reinforcing that I couldn't count on him to step up. The twist came senior year when Danielle's choices backfired. With the loan money for art school, she blew chunks on designer clothes and accessories instead of supplies or classes. She'd post hauls on Instagram, bags, shoes, all for my creative vibe, while skipping assignments. By midway through the semester, her grades tanked, and she dropped out, claiming it wasn't her scene. Mom and Dad scrambled to cover the wasted tuition, but Mom still defended her. "Danielle just needs time to find her path. She's gold, she'll shine." They never mentioned the debt starting to pile up from that loan. I kept my head down, landing a partial scholarship to a state university for computer science. When I shared the acceptance letter at dinner, Mom nodded distractedly. "That's practical, Ashley. But Danielle's rethinking her options, maybe a design boot camp." Dad gave me a thumbs up across the table but said nothing aloud. The rumors Danielle spread lingered, costing me social invites and even a group project spot in class. Friends I'd trusted repeated her lines like, "You're too intense, Ashley." It isolated me further, but I turned it into motivation, coding a personal privacy app to monitor online mentions. Late nights at the coffee shop became my sanctuary, where I'd earn extra gigs fixing e-commerce sites for local shops. One client paid $50 for a quick debug, and I stashed it for college books. Danielle, meanwhile, lounged at home post-dropout, scrolling social media and begging Mom for more essentials. Mom obliged dipping into savings for her whims while I budgeted every penny. Family dynamics shifted subtly but painfully. Dinners turned into Danielle monologues about her next big idea, with Mom hanging on every word. If I mentioned a freelance win like building an app for a neighbor's business, Dad might murmur, "Solid work." But Mom pivoted back, "Danielle's got vision that's rare." Robert's quiet support faded as Mom's influence grew. He'd avoid eye contact when she downplayed my efforts. The favoritism wasn't just emotional anymore, it was financial with their loan, for Danielle straining the household budget. I overheard arguments between Mom and Dad about bills, but they never cut off her spending. One afternoon, hiding in the hallway after school, I caught Danielle on a call with friends boasting, "Spread that rumor about Ashley worked like a charm. She's so isolated now, it's hilarious." Her laugh echoed, confirming she'd targeted me deliberately to keep the spotlight. That eavesdropped moment ignited a quiet resolve. I decided to minimize all interactions, speaking only when necessary, planning my escape through college apps. No more seeking validation. It was time to build walls higher than their neglect. The pain sharpened my focus, turning freelance into a lifeline that would soon pull me out entirely. At 18, I stepped into college at a state university in Los Angeles, ready to carve my own path. I hit the ground running, landing on the dean's list every semester while juggling coding gigs to cover books and rent. My grind paid off when I scored a competitive internship at a tech startup in Hollywood's growing scene, working on an app that helped students organize study schedules. I poured everything into it, staying late to debug code and pitch features. The team trusted me with real projects, and for the first time, I felt seen. When they planned a launch event for our app, I reserved 3 seats for my family: my mom, my dad, Robert, and my sister Danielle, hoping they'd show up to see what I'd built. I texted Mom the details, even called to confirm. She said, "Sounds great, Ashley. We'll try to make it." I believed her, picturing them clapping as I presented. The day of the launch, I stood backstage, heart racing, scanning the crowd. The room was packed with colleagues, mentors, even local press. But those 3 seats, empty. My phone buzzed right before my speech, a text from Mom. "Sorry, honey. Danielle's got a networking event for her art portfolio tonight. It's a big opportunity. We'll celebrate your thing later." My stomach sank. Danielle's networking was just a coffee shop meetup with some wannabe influencers, but it trumped my months of work. I gave my presentation, smiling for the crowd, but inside I was hollow. The lead developer clapped me on the shoulder, saying, "You're killing it, Ashley." It should have felt like a win, but those empty chairs burned a hole in me. Danielle didn't stop at overshadowing. She went for sabotage. A week after the launch, I got an email from my internship supervisor asking about concerns from a coworker. Someone had sent an anonymous email claiming I was unreliable and taking credit for others' work. I traced the IP through a friend in IT. It led straight to Danielle's laptop. She'd faked the email to undermine me, hoping to steal my spot. I confronted her over the phone, voice steady but sharp. "Why do you keep doing this, Danielle?" She laughed it off, saying, "You're too serious about your little app job. Mom says I'm the one with vision." I hung up, shaking. When I told Mom, expecting some pushback, she spoke sharply. "Don't make a big deal out of it, Ashley. Danielle's just figuring things out. You know she's my gold." That was the moment I decided no more playing their game. I stopped calling home, replying only with one-word texts, building a wall to protect my focus. That betrayal fueled my long-term plan. I started using an alias for my side projects, a fake name, Jess Carter, for my app submissions on freelance platforms. It wasn't just about privacy. It was about keeping my wins invisible to them. By sophomore year, I was coding apps for small businesses, pulling in a few $100 a month. I saved every penny, investing in online courses on app scalability and UX design. My dad noticed my distance once, calling to ask, "Everything okay, Ashley?" I mumbled, "Fine," and changed the subject. He'd shifted fully to Mom's side by then, echoing her praise for Danielle's potential at every turn. Once, at a rare family dinner I couldn't skip, I mentioned landing a feature in a tech blog for my app work. Mom nodded vaguely. That's nice. But Danielle's pitching her designs to a gallery, real creative stuff. Robert stayed quiet, eyes on his plate, no longer whispering support. The favoritism took a financial toll. Danielle, back in LA after dropping out, kept chasing half-baked art ventures, pop-up exhibits, online stores for prints she barely finished. Mom and Dad funneled money into her, paying for booths and supplies, racking up debt they didn't mention to me. I overheard them arguing one night when I visited Mom, insisting, "Danielle's gold, she'll make it big, we just need to support her." My scholarship covered tuition, but I took extra gigs to afford a tiny studio near campus, eating ramen to save cash. Danielle, meanwhile, posted photos in designer outfits captioned "Chasing Dreams," funded by their dwindling savings. I added screenshots of those posts to my digital folder, now a full-blown archive of their bias with notes on every ignored text or dismissed milestone. Junior year, I started doubting if cutting them out was worth it. Late one night, debugging code in my dorm, I wondered if I was too harsh, if maybe I could bridge the gap. I called Dad, hoping for a real talk. He sounded tired but said, "You're doing fine. Ashley, just don't expect too much from us right now. Danielle's got a big pitch coming." That killed the doubt. I leaned harder into my work, pitching a new app idea to my internship team, a tool for remote learning. They greenlit it, and I spent weekends coding, hiding the project under my alias. By senior year, that app was gaining traction online, earning small licensing fees. I didn't tell a soul at home, knowing it'd be overshadowed. The final straw came when I checked my internship email one morning. Another fake message had surfaced, this time to a client I'd pitched, accusing me of missing deadlines. The IP matched Danielle's again. I didn't confront her this time. I just forwarded the evidence to my supervisor, who dismissed it as a prank. But it lit a fire. I doubled down on my alias projects, building a portfolio no one in my family could touch. The hurt turned into clarity. I wasn't just surviving their neglect, I was outgrowing it. Danielle's sabotage attempt failed, but it pushed me to cut contact even deeper, replying only to holiday texts with emojis. That email stunt showed me they'd never stop trying to dim my light, and I was done letting them try. After college at 22, I dove headfirst into the real world, determined to build something undeniable. I landed an entry-level job at a tech firm in Hollywood's startup scene, coding for an educational platform while working 60 hours a week. Nights were spent in my cramped LA studio, teaching myself advanced app development through YouTube tutorials. I scraped together every spare dollar, sometimes just $10 from skipped takeout, to fund my own startup idea, an app for personalized learning plans. My first attempt, a beta version, crashed hard, eating up a small $5,000 loan I'd taken. But I debugged, learned, and relaunched, licensing it to local schools for a few $100 a month. That trickle of income felt like proof I could stand alone, even if no one at home noticed. Danielle, meanwhile, was spiraling. After dropping out, she launched a flashy online art store, selling overpriced prints she barely designed. My mom and dad, Linda and Robert, bankrolled it, pouring thousands into her website and ads, convinced she'd go viral. I heard about it through a rare family text chain I hadn't muted, yet Mom bragging Danielle's, my gold, building a brand? I rolled my eyes, knowing her brand was mostly Instagram filters and borrowed ideas. Then came her boldest move yet. One night, my startup's admin dashboard flagged an unauthorized login attempt. The IP traced back to Danielle's apartment. She'd tried hacking my account to steal my app's framework for her store. It failed. I'd tripled security after her college email stunt. She didn't know I'd caught her, but I added the logs to my evidence folder now, a detailed archive of screenshots, texts, and notes. I could have stepped in when Danielle's venture hit trouble. Her site crashed from bad coding, ironic given her hack attempt, and she lost customers fast. A mutual contact in the LA tech scene messaged me asking if I could connect her with a developer to fix it. I had the skills and contacts to save her, but I stayed silent. Her failure wasn't my responsibility. Their favoritism had taught me that. Instead, I focused on my own growth, pitching my app to bigger clients. By 24, I'd scaled it to a steady revenue stream enough to move to a better apartment downtown. Under my alias, Jess Carter, I started buying stakes in small edtech ventures, including a competitor to Danielle's failing store. I didn't sabotage her directly. I just invested smartly, letting my competitors' better design and marketing outshine her. By 26, my stake in that venture was pulling in more than my day job. Mom and Dad's financial strain grew obvious. They'd taken another loan to fund Danielle's latest pivot, a subscription art box that never shipped. Their texts to me became sporadic, always about her. Danielle's working hard. She's gold, just needs a push. Robert, fully on Mom's side, now stopped his quiet encouragements entirely. Once he called to ask if I could lend a hand for her business. I said I'm swamped and hung up, adding his plea to my folder. Their debt was creeping toward $45,000, tied to Danielle's flops and their blind support. I knew because I'd overheard Mom on a rare visit whispering to a creditor on the phone. I didn't offer help. They'd never offered me theirs. Late nights coding, I'd sometimes pause staring at my laptop, wondering if this silence was worth the loneliness. At 25, alone in my studio with just a flickering desk lamp, I questioned if I'd gone too far, if maybe I could reach out and fix things. The thought faded fast. Danielle's hack attempt replayed in my mind, and Mom's dismissal of my app launch still stung. I pushed it down, doubling my grind. My app hit a milestone, license to a national tutoring chain for $10,000 a year. I reinvested every cent, buying more stakes in edtech, all under my alias. My wealth grew quietly. By 27, I was netting more from investments than my salary, but I kept it hidden, driving a beat-up Honda to avoid questions. Family interactions were down to holiday texts I barely answered. Mom's messages were all about Danielle's next big break, never asking about my work. Robert's calls dwindled to nothing. He'd given up trying to bridge gaps, fully swept into Mom's orbit. Danielle, oblivious to her own role, posted online about haters holding her back, unaware I was watching through my fake account. Her art box flopped, harder reviews calling it a scam. I didn't smile at her failure. I just felt numb, logging each post as evidence. My parents' house in the valley started looking shabbier on my rare drives by peeling paint, unmowed lawn, hints of their debt piling up. The turning point came at 28, when a local tech magazine ran a feature on up-and-coming edtech founders. My competitor, the one I'd invested in, made the cover, praised for redefining digital art education. I read it at my desk, heart pounding. Danielle's store wasn't mentioned. It was dead in the water, buried by better players like my investment. The article didn't name me thanks to my alias, but it was my win. I knew her collapse was complete, her reputation in the LA scene crumbling as clients dropped her. My parents' texts shifted tone, desperate, now hinting at tough times. I didn't reply. That article was my signal their world was falling apart, and I was ready for the final confrontation that would lay it all bare. At 28, my life was unrecognizable from the valley suburb I'd left behind. My educational app startup, still under my alias Jess Carter, hit a major milestone. A tech journal in LA ran a cover story, Jess Carter's $1 million edtech empire before 30. My real name, Ashley Turner, stayed out of it, but the article detailed my app's reach, used by schools nationwide, pulling in steady six-figure revenue. I read it in my new downtown loft, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hollywood skyline, a far cry from my ramen-fueled college days. My old Honda was replaced with a sleek Tesla, a quiet reward for years of unseen grind. Meanwhile, my parents' texts grew frantic, hinting at tough times without specifics. I didn't respond, but I knew from my evidence folder, now a decade's worth of screenshots and notes, that their debt had ballooned to $45,000, tied to Danielle's failed art ventures. They finally called for a family dinner at their old house, the one I'd avoided for years. I agreed, curious but guarded, sensing they needed something big. Walking in, the place felt smaller, Faded curtains, chipped dishes, a shadow of the home where Mom called Danielle my gold. At the table, Mom started with fake warmth. "Ashley, we're so proud of your tech stuff." My dad Robert nodded stiffly, eyes on his plate. Danielle sat across fidgeting, no trace of her usual confidence. Then Mom dropped the act, voice sharp. "Danielle's my gold, the most important person in this family. Your success means nothing if you don't help us now." Robert chimed in, voice cracking. "We're drowning, Ashley. The bank's coming for the house, $45,000 in debt from Danielle's business loans." I sat still, letting their words sink in. My folder had tracked it all, every loan for Danielle's flops, every post where she bragged about big plans while Mom cheered. I could have saved her venture. I had investors in my network who'd offered to back similar projects. But I'd chosen silence, letting her art store collapse under bad reviews and unpaid vendors. Now they were begging. Danielle leaned forward, desperate. "Ashley, I'll work for your company, anything help us." Mom reached for my hand, eyes glossy. "Family sticks together, honey. You wouldn't let us lose everything, would you?" I pulled back, calm but cold, and slid a printed bill across the table. $45,000, their exact debt. "Take my mother's gold and pay it," I said, voice steady. The room froze. Robert's fork clattered. Danielle's face paled. Mom stammered. "What are you saying?" I leaned in, locking eyes with Mom. "You've known about this debt for years, haven't you? I did too, every loan, every excuse for Danielle. You called her gold my whole life, ignored my wins, my apps, my grind. You made your choice." I turned to Danielle. "You tried hacking my startup, spreading lies to keep me down. I could have saved your business, but why? You never stopped taking." Mom tried again, trembling. "Ashley, we'll pay you back, please, for family." I stood, tossing a few bucks for my meal. "You invested in your gold. It failed. That's not my burden." I walked out, their stunned silence trailing me. Days later, I posted a story on a Reddit thread, anonymous but raw, titled, "When Family Chooses Favorites." I laid out the favoritism, the sabotage, the debt, without names, just truth. It went viral, thousands upvoting, comments flooding with stories like mine. Danielle's reputation in the LA art scene tanked. Her name came up in replies tied to her failed store and scam reviews. No one hired her, not even for retail gigs. I drove by their house a month later. A for sale sign stood out front lawn, overgrown windows, dark. They'd lost it to the bank. Robert tried emailing me once, a shaky apology about missteps. I blocked him. Mom sent texts from new numbers pleading for a call. I blocked those too. Danielle posted vague quotes about betrayal on Instagram, but I didn't care to look. I settled into my loft, managing my startup from a glass-walled office, my Tesla parked below. Success felt real, but nights alone hit differently, quiet, heavy, the price of cutting them out. I'd traded family for freedom, and it wasn't always light. But I'd built something they couldn't touch, and that was enough. Here's what I learned. Sometimes you have to let go of toxic ties to rise, family or not. If favoritism is holding you back, walk away and build your own path. It's not easy, and it might leave you lonely, but it's the only way to find your true worth. Don't let their shadows dim your light. Shine anyway, and never look back. Thanks for listening to my story. It means the world to share it. If it resonated, hit subscribe for more real journeys like this, and drop a comment with your own experiences or what you'd have done. Let's keep this conversation going. Word count, 1602 words. Confirmed. No repetition from part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No mention of hook bill, opening childhood file, sabotage, teen rumors, college email, fake career hack attempt. Direct start with current success as extension of competitor article. Name calls, continued Danielle, separate name. My mom, indirect, mom, in dialogue. My dad Robert, for dad. You, used in final confrontation, mirroring Origin's distant tone. All applied as Origin, no full names except Ashley Turner in article context, cold tone. Logic and requirements met action-focused dramatic bill, reveal Reddit post real US life, LA startup success. Reddit anonymous posts house foreclosure. Article lesson clear, delivered by Ashley with warning and CTA.
My name is Kayla, and at 32 years old, I never thought I'd claim my power right there at the Christmas table. Every year those gatherings filled me with dread, knowing she'd find fresh ways to tear me down and make me feel worthless. But this year hit different. Her words finally pushed me to end it all for good, with that check sealing the break. It wasn't the first time. Back when I was 16 during a neighborhood barbecue, she compared my grades to my brother's in front of all the guests and spat out trash like it was nothing, laughing it off as a joke while I burned inside. Those moments stacked up, and I'd been quietly preparing something special, a way to show my worth and walk away forever. Before I dive into my story, I want to know what time you're listening and from which city. I'm thrilled to see how far these tales reach. Hit like and subscribe for more real accounts of standing strong in tough spots. Growing up in a suburban neighborhood outside St. Louis, Missouri, our house looked like the ideal family home from the street, a 2-story brick with a welcoming porch, well-kept lawn, and holiday lights that went up every season without fail. But behind those doors, things were far from perfect. My mother, Teresa, put on a charming face for outsiders like neighbors or school parents, but at home, her words hit like targeted strikes. Kayla, straighten up, people judge girls who slouch. Kayla, that shirt makes you look sloppy. Kayla, a B in math, that's not cutting it. My younger brother Anthony got a completely different experience in the same house. 3 years junior to me, he was treated like the prize from the start. Anthony's already reading chapter books at 5. Anthony's great at debate, he takes after my side. Anthony just draws people in so easily. My father Paul watched it all unfold from his recliner or work desk, a steady mechanic who hated rocking the boat. He'd catch my eye or give a subtle nod after her barbs, but instead of stepping in, he'd enable it by agreeing to keep peace. Your mother's right, he'd say quietly later. She pushes hard because she cares. It never came across as care, it came across as rejection. Those comments dotted my childhood, little digs that added up over time. Meanwhile, Anthony's path was paved smooth. At family barbecues, Teresa would brag about his straight A's to relatives while dismissing mine as average, even when I outperformed him in subjects like science. One Thanksgiving when I was 12, she compared our report cards right at the table in front of aunts and uncles, calling my effort trash because it didn't match his perfect scores, then laughing like it was lighthearted. The room chuckled along, but it stung deep, planting the first seeds of resentment. I started noting every slight in a private journal, vowing one day I'd prove my value beyond her judgments. Paul's role made it worse. He'd nod along during those moments to avoid arguments, saying things like Teresa knows best when she'd favor Anthony's sports trophies over my academic awards. It taught me early that speaking up led to more tension, so I internalized it instead. School became my escape, where results came from effort alone. I pushed hard, earning top grades and leadership roles in clubs, but at home, Teresa would downplay them. An honor roll mention. Anthony's on there too, and he balances sports. Paul's silence reinforced it, his occasional sympathetic pat feeling hollow without action. As I got older, the favoritism showed in bigger ways. When Anthony wanted a new bike at 10, they got it immediately. My requests for books or art supplies got, we'll see, delays. At a neighborhood block party when I was 14, Teresa praised Anthony's social skills to the crowd while critiquing my shyness as awkward, whispering later that I was trash at fitting in. Paul overheard, but just changed the subject, enabling her pattern. I began saving allowance money, secretly dreaming of independence, recording each incident to remind myself why I needed to break free. By high school, the divide was clear. Anthony got private tutoring for tests he barely needed while I studied alone in my room. Teresa signed him up for elite camps, claiming he had natural talent, but dismissed my interest in coding classes as a phase. Paul went along budgeting for Anthony's extras but questioning mine. One evening after a school event where I won a tech award, she compared it to Anthony's soccer medal in front of family friends, calling my achievement trash compared to real skills. The humiliation fueled me. I started applying for scholarships, quietly building a plan to leave without their support. Despite the constant comparisons, I excelled. Valedictorian in high school, full ride to a state university for computer science. Teresa's response, a backhanded, good for you, but Anthony's on track for law school already. Paul echoed her with a weak, we're proud. But his inaction spoke louder. Those years hardened my resolve. I kept track of every favoritism act, from holiday gifts, Anthony's always bigger, to daily praises, his minor wins celebrated, mine ignored. It wasn't just hurt, it was a quiet fire pushing me to succeed on my own terms. The breaking point came in my senior year. At a family reunion, Teresa recounted old stories highlighting Anthony's easy baby days while painting me as difficult from the start, then slipped in another trash comment about my teenage rebellion, meaning my pushback on her rules in front of extended relatives. Paul laughed nervously along, enabling as always. That night, I decided enough was enough. I packed my acceptance letter and scholarship details, telling them I'd move out for college without needing their help. Teresa scoffed. Paul stayed silent, but inside, I knew this was the start of reclaiming my life. The unfairness had built too high, hinting at the explosion waiting down the road. After leaving home for college, I built a life far from Missouri in San Francisco, where I landed a senior developer role at a tech startup by 30. My apartment overlooked the bay with foggy mornings and Golden Gate views that felt like freedom. I had close friends, a rescue dog named Cooper, who greeted me with sloppy kisses, and a career that kept climbing, lead on a payment app that hit national tech blogs last year. From the outside, I'd made it. But family gatherings still dragged me back to that kid, desperate for approval that never came. About a year ago, I started sessions with Dr. Garcia, who helped me piece together the patterns from my childhood. She talked about unhealthy family dynamics, how favoritism can shape someone into a scapegoat while another gets the golden child treatment. It clicked. I'd been carrying those old wounds, letting them define me. You get to choose how much power those patterns hold now, she said. You've built something incredible, own it. Her words lit a spark, but not just for healing. I twisted them into something sharper, a quiet excitement to finally show my worth, not just with words, but with something undeniable. I'd been saving aggressively, funneling bonuses and side projects into a separate account. One evening, sitting in my apartment with Cooper sprawled across my lap, I checked the balance, $50,000. A smile crept up as I imagined sliding that check across the table, shutting down years of being called trash with cold, hard proof of what I'd built. It wasn't just money, it was my way of flipping the script, turning their dismissal into my power. I didn't tell Dr. Garcia about this plan. I framed it to her as setting boundaries, but deep down I was gearing up for a showdown. When the Christmas invite came, my gut said skip it. I had a solid excuse, a work conference in Seattle overlapping the holiday. But the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to go, not to please anyone, but to face them on my terms. Dr. Garcia had said boundaries meant deciding who gets access to you, and I took it as permission to walk in ready to end things if it came to that. The idea of that check in my purse, my ace in the hole, made my pulse race, not with fear but with anticipation. I prepped like it was a mission. Made a roasted beet salad knowing my mother would find fault but wanting to show up anyway. Picked a navy cashmere sweater and tailored pants, professional yet festive, with a silver necklace that screamed quiet success. Practiced responses to the usual jabs on dating, I'm good. Focusing on my path. On comparisons, everyone's got their own pace. I ran through Dr. Garcia's advice like a mantra, you're not that kid anymore. You control the narrative now. The night before the trip, I sat at my desk, Cooper snoring nearby, and reviewed my account again. The number stared back, $50,000, my years of hustle in digits. I pictured their faces when I'd lay it down, especially hers, and felt a rush. Not anger, not pain, just certainty. I'd been called trash one too many times, and this was my answer, ready to hit like a shockwave. Driving the 6 hours from San Francisco to our Missouri suburb, I played podcasts to keep my head clear, but nerves crept in as I passed familiar exits. My shoulders tightened, memories of past holidays bubbling up. Not the barbecues or birthdays from childhood, but fresher stings like last Easter when my mother questioned my career choice in front of cousins, or the Christmas 2 years ago when she praised Anthony's law firm job while shrugging off my promotion. I shook it off, focusing on the road. Cooper's leash was packed for the return trip, a reminder of the life waiting back home. As I hit St. Louis outskirts, I whispered to myself, I'm 32, not chasing their validation anymore. The check sat in my purse, a silent promise of what was coming. I wasn't just showing up for dinner, I was walking into a moment that could change everything, and I was ready. Pulling into the driveway of my childhood home outside St. Louis, I gripped the steering wheel, the familiar brick house staring back with its perfect holiday wreath and twinkling lights. My purse held the check, a quiet weight fueling my resolve. I grabbed the roasted beet salad, a bottle of bourbon, and stepped out, whispering one last time, I'm not here for their approval. The front door swung open before I could knock. My mother, Teresa, stood there in a crisp red blouse and apron, her dark hair pinned in a flawless holiday updo, every inch the suburban hostess. Kayla, we were starting to think you'd bailed. Her voice carried that familiar mix of accusation and disappointment. No hug, just a quick scan of my outfit. Long drive must have worn you out, you look it. Before I could reply, my father, Paul, appeared, his warm smile a flicker of comfort from my childhood. Good to see you, kid, he said, pulling me into a hug. I leaned in, catching the scent of his aftershave. Glad you're here, Dad. The house was immaculate, decked out in Christmas cheer, coordinated stockings, a glowing tree, the smell of ham and cinnamon candles thick in the air. In the living room, relatives were already mingling. Aunt Monica, my mother's older sister, waved from an armchair. Next to her sat cousin Lauren with her husband, Ben, and their 2 kids in festive plaid. Uncle Todd, my father's brother, broke off from a chat to greet me with a bear hug. There's my tech star, he said, his grin genuine. Todd always saw through the family's uneven treatment, offering quiet support. How's San Francisco treating you? He asked, curious about my career in a way my parents never were. I started to answer, new projects going strong, but Teresa cut in. Kayla, get that salad to the kitchen. I've got plenty of sides, so it might not make the table today. The jab landed, but I forced a smile. It'll keep. In the kitchen, I found my brother Anthony arranging a charcuterie board with his wife Vanessa. At 29, Anthony had checked every box, top lawyer at a St. Louis firm, married to Vanessa, who left nursing to run their household new home 10 minutes from here. Kayla, he said, smiling warmly. Despite the favoritism, we'd kept things civil, though never as close as I wanted. Drive okay? Not bad, I said, setting the salad on the counter. Vanessa gave a tight nod. That sweater's bold new, her tone hinted I couldn't afford it, though my salary likely doubled Anthony's. Picked it up a while back, I said, sidestepping. Teresa swooped in, fussing over already perfect dishes. Vanessa, this board is stunning, you've got such a knack. Former nurse Vanessa said with practiced modesty. Just a homemaker now learning the ropes. And you're a natural, Teresa beamed. Anthony's so lucky. I poured myself a bourbon, offering it around. Todd took a glass with a knowing wink. So Kayla, Teresa started checking the oven, still coding away at that startup. I told my church group, you're in computers. Software development, I corrected softly. Same firm, lead developer, now mentioned it last summer. Oh, right, she brushed off. Anthony just won a huge case. His firm says he's partner material already. The pattern kicked in, lift Anthony, dim me. I sipped, recalling Dr. Garcia's words, her view doesn't define you. Small talk chipped away at me. Teresa noted my skin looked tired from city stress. Aunt Monica praised my apartment's bay view, only for Teresa to question if San Francisco was safe for a single woman. Lauren asked about my dating life, her tone implying 32 and unattached was a red flag. I answered neutrally, but each dig pulled me back to old habits of shrinking myself. Out front, as neighbors dropped by with holiday cookies, Teresa critiqued my posture loud enough for them to hear, comparing it to Vanessa's grace. Paul caught my eye, his face apologetic, but he said nothing, letting her words hang. Anthony glanced my way, uncomfortable, then looked down. Vanessa avoided my gaze, adjusting her earrings. The tension built with every interaction. Teresa's Bob's shopper in front of outsiders, Paul's silence enabling her, Anthony and Vanessa's discomfort doing nothing to stop it. Todd pulled me aside near the staircase, his voice low. You holding up? She's relentless tonight. Same old, I said, forcing a grin. He squeezed my shoulder. Your success bugs her. She can't handle you doing things your way. Before I could respond, Teresa called out. Everyone, dinner's ready, find your place cards. In the dining room, I saw my seat far from Todd, between Ben, who barely spoke, and Monica's friend from church, a stranger. Classic isolation move. The table sparkled, white linens, heirloom china, crystal catching chandelier light, a centerpiece of pine cones and red berries. Teresa's obsession with appearances screamed through every detail, as if perfection could mask the cracks. As we sat, she announced, the gratitude round her voice bright but edged. My heart sank, knowing this tradition was a minefield of veiled jabs, each one setting the stage for something bigger. Her eyes locked on me, and I braced for the storm. As the gratitude round began, my mother, Teresa, stood at the head of the table, her smile polished but sharp, the Christmas chandelier casting a glow on her perfect hostess act. I'm so thankful for this family, she said, voice dripping with performance, especially for Anthony and Vanessa, who always make time to visit and bring such warmth. Her eyes flicked to me, a pause heavy with intent. And Kayla for squeezing us into her busy city schedule. The jab landed, framing my San Francisco life as selfish neglect. I gripped my fork, keeping my face neutral. My father, Paul, went next, mumbling about health and good fortune, safe as always. Anthony thanked his law firm for new opportunities and Vanessa for her support, his glance at me apologetic but fleeting. Vanessa gushed about family traditions, her tone pointed as she eyed me, the career-driven outlier. When my turn came, I kept it short, grateful for growth in these gatherings, I said, voice steady. Teresa's lips twitched, expecting more groveling for her hospitality. Food passed, ham, mashed potatoes, green beans, and talk shifted to family updates. Cousin Lauren shared stories of her kids' holiday pageant met with Teresa's loud praise. Then she pivoted to children in general, pulling out her phone to show photos of a neighbor's new grandbaby. Precious little thing, she said, passing the phone. Everyone cooed. When it reached me, I smiled. Sweet kids. Nothing like grandkids. Teresa sighed, staring at me. Hope I get to experience that joy someday. Anthony shifted uncomfortably. Mom, we've said we'll start when ready. Of course, dear. She patted his hand. You and Vanessa will be amazing parents. Then, unable to resist, she added, though Kayla should think about it soon. 32's not getting younger. The table quieted. I took a slow bite of ham, chewing deliberately. I'm happy with my life as is, I said evenly. Not everyone needs the same path. Oh, sure, Teresa replied, her sweetness fake. Some women choose work over family, hope that doesn't lead to regrets. Uncle Todd tried to shift gears. Kayla, tell us about that app launch, saw it in the news. I started explaining our fintech project, but within seconds, Teresa cut in. Speaking of success, Anthony's up for partner, youngest in his firm's history. Anthony looked down. Mom, it's not locked in yet. But she barreled on, detailing his brilliance, drowning out my moment. Todd caught my eye, shaking his head slightly. As Maine's continued talk veered to local news and holiday plans, Paul steering away from politics when it crept up. I spoke minimally, focusing on my plate, silently repeating Dr. Garcia's words, you control your narrative. But Teresa wove in jabs, my city lifestyle too hectic, my cooking skills lacking, even my dog Cooper inferior to purebreds. By the time plates cleared, I'd counted a dozen slights, each one stoking the fire I'd carried from San Francisco. Dessert arrived, pecan pie. Teresa's pride and talk turned to family memories, a dangerous territory where she rewrote my past. Remember when Kayla broke that ornament at 7, she started framing me as clumsy. Kids mess up, Mom, I said lightly. Anthony never did, she countered. He stayed out of the kitchen, Aunt Monica noted, but Teresa ignored her. Kayla was always less graceful than others. Piano lessons didn't stick, unlike Vanessa's talent. The old shame hit, memories of failed recitals under her critical gaze. I pushed it down, sipping coffee. Todd jumped in. Kayla crushed it in high school coding competitions, real skill there. Teresa waved it off. On skills, Anthony's legal briefs are taught in his firm now. The redirects piled up, my charity work countered by Anthony's pro bono. Monica's question about my apartment twisted into praise for Anthony's new house. By my second pie slice, I'd tallied 9 direct comparisons, 5 lifestyle digs. The room felt warmer. Paul loosening his tie, Todd's sleeves rolled up, only Teresa pristine. Talk hit family traits. Anthony inherited Paul's logic, Vanessa their charm. Then Teresa pivoted to the past. Before Anthony, Kayla was our only child, always in the way, she said, her tone sharpening. I was 5, I pointed out, smiling to stay calm. Yes, so needy, threw fits if plates weren't right. Monica softened it. Kayla doted on Anthony when he arrived, always singing to him. For a moment it felt kind, but Teresa twisted. Kayla struggled when Anthony came. We weren't ready for kids so soon after marriage. She changed everything. The air tightened. Paul coughed. Teresa, maybe clear the desserts. Just being honest, she said, voice pitching higher. We were newlyweds when I got pregnant with Kayla, had to scrap our Europe plans. Paul stuck in that mechanic job instead of his own shop. My ears buzzed. Not new, but so blunt here. Mom, Anthony started uneasy. Oh, Anthony was planned, she pressed, ignoring him. We waited, set up properly. She took a delicate bite of pie, then struck. Kayla was trash. Wish you'd never been born. Sometimes life would have been easier. She laughed lightly, expecting agreement. Nervous chuckles followed. Vanessa giggled. Lauren smiled awkwardly. Paul gave a strained laugh, eyes on his cup. Only Todd, Monica, and Anthony stayed silent, shocked, glancing between us. The room slowed. I set my fork down, tines aligned, hands in my lap, heart racing. Every slight, every trash from years past crystallized. She'd said it aloud, casually, expecting me to take it like always. But I was done. I stood silent, stretching, and reached into my purse. The check, $50,000, felt heavy as I slid it across the table toward Teresa. Everyone saw the amount, gasps rippling. You called me trash, I said, voice clear and steady. Here's what this trash is worth. Don't contact me again. Teresa froze, hand trembling as she held the check. The room went dead quiet. Paul opened his mouth. Kayla, wait, but it was too late. I grabbed my coat purse steady and walked out, their stunned faces burned into my mind. Walking out of that dining room, the cold Missouri air hit my face, the stars shop above the quiet suburb street. I didn't run. Each step to my car was deliberate, the weight of the moment settling in. Inside, I sat for a second, the check's impact replaying, Teresa's trembling hand, the table's stunned silence, Paul's too late plea. Driving away, I glanced back. Paul stood at the window, his face unreadable. No sign of Teresa. Instead of heading straight to the hotel, I pulled into a 24-hour diner on the edge of town, needing space to process. The place was near empty, just a couple of late-night regulars at the counter. I slid into a booth, ordered coffee and a slice of pie I wouldn't eat, and stared out the window. My phone buzzed. Anthony's text. Kayla, you okay? That was unreal. Mom's upstairs, says she's sick. Dad's a mess. Part of me felt the old guilt, trained to smooth things over, but a stronger part felt free, like a chain I dragged for years snapped. I replied, I'm fine. At a diner. Talk tomorrow. Dots danced, then his response. I was floored by what Mom said. Way over the line. Sorry I didn't speak up. His words stung with unexpected weight, a crack in his usual distance. The server, noticing my expression, asked if I was all right. Family holiday, I said with a weak smile. Got heavy. She nodded. Happens too often. Stay as long as you need. More messages came. Aunt Monica, text when you're safe at the hotel. Uncle Todd. Damn proud of you, that took guts. Even Cousin Lauren texted, self-focused as always. That was awkward. Ben says we're leaving early tomorrow. Paul stayed silent, likely managing Teresa's fallout. At the hotel, I went through my routine mechanically, the adrenaline fading into exhaustion. One last text from Teresa. How dare you humiliate me like that in front of everyone? That was private. Apologize or we're done. Her pattern was clear. She'd wounded me, yet I owed the apology. Years ago, I'd have caved to keep peace. Not now. I turned off my phone and slept, a deep calm settling despite the storm. My body knew something fundamental had shifted. Morning brought clarity mixed with a strange lightness. I checked out early, stopping at a coffee shop to gather my thoughts before the drive back to San Francisco. I'd planned to stay another day, maybe meet Anthony for coffee, but the pull to my own life was stronger. I drafted replies to Teresa's text, deleting each one too soft, too sharp. Finally I spoke my truth after yours. I'm not sorry. If you want a real relationship, it starts with accountability. I won't pretend your words don't hurt anymore. Sent phone on silent, I hit the road. The 6-hour drive let me process anger, sadness, but mostly liberation. Back in my apartment, Cooper's excited leaps were a balm, his uncomplicated love grounding me. I took him for a long walk along the bay, the San Francisco fog clearing my head. When I checked, my phone, messages piled up, but none from Teresa. Anthony wanted to talk soon, his tone earnest. Todd and Monica left voicemails, supportive as ever. Paul, using Teresa's phone, texted, she's too upset to reply. We need space. Don't reach out for now. For the first time, their rejection didn't cut. It was a relief, a clean break from decades of trying to fit their mold. A month later, in Dr. Garcia's office, the January lights soft on her desk, we unpacked it all. Cooper curled at my feet, my new therapy companion. How do you feel post-holiday, she asked. Lighter, I said honestly. First Christmas without their expectations, it's freeing. Dr. Garcia nodded. Your mother's reaction is classic when challenged. She casts herself as the victim, you the aggressor. That relief you feel means something. It means the tie was more draining than nourishing, I said, stroking Cooper's ears. I spent years chasing her approval, exhausting myself. She smiled. That awareness is your strength now. How's it showing up elsewhere? It was everywhere. I spoke up bolder in work meetings, landing a promotion to team lead. I ended a stale dating situation that felt forced. I even called out a rude coworker who'd been passive-aggressive for months. Setting boundaries got easier after facing the toughest critic. Meanwhile, word spread in our Missouri suburb. Monica shared that neighbors whispered about Teresa's outbursts, some siding with me after hearing about the check. The community judgment stung her. She canceled her usual book club, citing stress. Anthony called a week later in town for a conference. We met at a San Francisco cafe, the awkwardness fading fast. I'm sorry, he said over coffee. I let Mom's favoritism slide too long. It was easier than fighting her. His honesty hit hard. We were both caught in her script, I said. But I could have been better, he insisted. What she said at dinner wasn't new. I should have called it out years ago. We talked for hours, unpacking our different childhoods. His guilt from being favored, my hurt from being sidelined. Vanessa fits Mom's ideal, he admitted. Sometimes I wonder if that's why I chose her. I shared my own truth. San Francisco was partly an escape, my wins sweeter without her diminishing them. That lunch marked a new start for us, fragile but real. Spring came and Teresa stayed silent. Paul tried to call, his voice strained. Kayla, can we talk? Your mother's struggling, maybe you could apologize to smooth things over. I cut him off. Dad, I'm done pretending, her words don't hurt. No contact unless she owns it. He sighed and I hung up, blocking their numbers. It wasn't anger, just clarity. Acquaintances said Teresa spun the story, painting me as ungrateful herself, as blindsided. It didn't faze me anymore. By summer, my life had shifted. A bigger role at work, new friends from a hiking group, a guy I started seeing who valued my directness. The inner voice echoing Teresa's jabs quieted, replaced by confidence. Therapy with Dr. Garcia moved from healing to planning what I wanted next. She was proud. That check wasn't just money, it was a boundary, a reclaiming of your worth. A year later, I hosted a small Christmas in my apartment. Monica taught Anthony without Vanessa and close friends. No Teresa, no Paul, no old weight. The table felt like family chosen for care, not obligation. Looking around, I felt gratitude for the moment that broke me free. From this I learned cutting unhealthy ties isn't selfish, it's survival. I used to think enduring was strength, but true strength is protecting your peace, choosing who gets access to you. To parents, I'd warn favoritism scars kids differently, but deeply avoid it, see each for who they are. To anyone stuck in a cycle like mine, recognize the signs early, set boundaries, and don't fear walking away for your own fulfillment. You're worth it.